everyone, and thanks for coming to this month's Sketch and Stuff session. My name is Leah, and it is March, so it's Women's History Month. The theme for this month that I wanted to go over was talking about how to draw varying female body types. So the reason that I want to go into this topic a little bit is because we often see female characters, but we don't see a whole lot of representation for the many different body types that there are. A lot of the time, what you may see is kind of like hourglass figure type, or in Marvel superheroines, for example, you do see that kind of like more definitely muscular for the superheroes, but also more on the petite end, slim waists, larger hips, larger bust. And although there's definitely nothing wrong with that body type, it's definitely a body type that exists. There's also nothing wrong with kind of expanding the characters that we create so that we can represent more people, make people feel like they are seen and acknowledged, and on top of that, having more of a variety of stories that we can tell through our art. So I'm starting off by showing you guys kind of like this example with the Disney princesses here. There is nothing wrong with the way that Disney draws their princesses. It's definitely a style of theirs and it's an icon. But as you can see, all of their proportions are roughly very similar. They do have that like medium-sized bust, very small waist, and then larger, or like not larger, sorry, just medium-sized hips, although it is kind of difficult to see because of their dresses. And then they all are roughly around the same height as well. There are slight variations to their body types, but I'll show you guys in the next slide area kind of how different body types can be represented and how varying they really can be. And even the next one doesn't show all of the different things. So we can push things like height, weight, size in different parts of the body. We can push things like the muscles and how large they are, or maybe sometimes people will even have like maybe they have a prosthetic limb, or maybe they are in a wheelchair because they're paraplegic. So these are just different ways that we can address more stories and more realism in our characters. So here I'm showing you guys this picture that I got off of a body positivity campaign, and if we just look at the first two models, how very different they are as far as like height and proportion goes. The first model is pretty round and voluptuous. She has large thighs compared to her calves. The second model is more straight. Her bust compared to her waist ratio is pretty similar. Like her bust is not much bigger than her waist. That's not because her waist is large. She's just kind of got like a less tapered waist, a little bit broader, but still on the thin side. Her hips are not very large compared to the rest of her body, and then she has long, slender legs. And if you go and you compare that with this body all the way at the end, that person is quite a bit more petite. They are the shortest character on here, for example, but they do have a more tapered waist, even though they don't seem like they have very much fat or muscle content on their body. The person next to them is another way that we can make things a little bit different. Her torso is quite long compared to her legs, which are a lot shorter. And then if you compare her character to this character in yellow over here, this character's body has a much shorter torso compared to her long legs. So that's another way that we can change that up a bit. And then we have another character who is a lot more muscular. We can see like her muscle tone. So she's not really on the skinny side. She's got a lot of like bumps to show that she does have an athletic figure. So this is Steven Universe. This is a show that's actually very, very good at representing a variety of body types. The show is about aliens who came to Earth and they're here as protectors. their forms are not actually physical forms, they're just what the show calls a manifestation of light. So it's just kind of like this optical illusion of their bodies. But all of their bodies, although they're not actually female, are represented in the female form. There are male characters in the show, but we're not going to address them today, although their body types are varying as well, which is great. So it's like great for representation on both sides. But today we are just going to focus on the female characters. So right here, the first character is called Garnet. She's a very tall character. She's taller than the other main characters. So she has a small-ish kind of bust, a very, very tiny waist, very large hips proportionate to the rest of her body, large thighs, and then smaller calves compared to her thighs. She also has very slender arms. This pink and blue character here is Pearl. Her form is a lot less rounded, a lot more kind of like boxy, but very slender. So she has a slender torso, slender hips, long slender thighs and legs, and large feet. This purple one is Amethyst. She's very short, and she has a primarily round figure, a short torso, short legs, large hips. Her waist is tapered a little bit, but not too much, and then she has all around thicker legs and very small feet and small hands, thick arms as well. So she just has a very rounded, cute kind of figure. This is Jasper. She's very muscular. Her character is supposed to be very powerful, kind of like on the aggressive side, and her figure is actually not super different from this character next to her named Rose Quartz, but the difference is that Jasper is shown to be more toned, kind of like firm, and she obviously has like some fat content on her for sure, but she also has a lot of muscle, whereas Rose is a more rounded, soft character. Although both of them are very powerful, they're both depicted to be very powerful because they're both soldiers. So Rose is primarily made of like rounded shapes, and then she's got this long dress, so we can't actually see what her legs look like here. And then lastly, Lapis is kind of like a similar proportion to Pearl, but Lapis is less thin. She's got a little bit more curvature to her, and she's a little bit shorter than Pearl is. Okay, so this was just kind of an overview of the characters to explain to you the many different ways that just these characters are represented, and there's a whole cast, so they go all out with representing a huge myriad of different ways that people can look. And the thing is, if we compare that back with like the Disney princess look, it's not as if, I mean, Steven Universe is definitely a cartoony style for sure, but it's not as if the concept of like the body types is less realistic. If you look at like the Disney princesses, it's not like everybody there is drawn in this super realistic style. For example, like Belle's father in Beauty and the Beast or Gaston's sidekick in Beauty and the Beast are both very cartoonish looking and have cartoonish looking proportions. And then the same goes for like Jasmine in Aladdin. Her father is very cartoony looking, and so is Jafar. So it's not like everybody has this super realistic looking look to them in the characters in these movies. It's just that for the princesses specifically, they're going for this certain look. So if it's a matter of trying to have like realism in your art, definitely don't worry about like, well, I want to make it more realistic. In reality, people are shaped in all sorts of different ways, so the more realistic thing to do is actually to diversify that in your art. And that's just extremely helpful to people. It helps people's kind of like body image, self-concept, being able to see a version of yourself kind of represented on the screen allows people to have a more expanded concept as to what kind of things they can do. So if we're always seeing the same character depicted as the hero, for example, who's going to think that they can be the hero? Just the people who identify with that character. But if you push that and you have lots of different characters who can be the hero, that makes them feel more accepted, more included in these kinds of stories. And this goes beyond like body shape, this is also like a huge thing with racial representation, for example, or depicting people of like different religious beliefs and stuff like that. But that's like a whole that's a whole other topic. So anyways, now I'm gonna show you how to kind of like be able to play around with proportions and make your own characters. I make these little circles, so I put a circle to represent the bust, a circle to represent the waist, and then one to represent the hips. You don't actually have to use circles, you could use squares or triangles, but I'm just using circles because it makes it easier. So I put a short neck, a circle to represent the head, some circles for the arms, and those are now the proportions that I've set for my character. So as you can see, the ratio is very much like the waist is very, very thin compared to the bust and then to the hips. And now I'm going to make another character where I made the bust quite a lot smaller. I put the waist circle down. I made the waist circle a lot more proportionate to the bust, and I brought it down lower, and then I brought the hips down lower and made them a lot larger, and this is going to make the character have a longer torso, which tapers out to wider hips. And I'm also going to give the second character shorter legs. So now I'm just drawing over it, and I'm just making my character design here. And another thing, just as a quick bonus for another reason why making characters have different body styles is helpful to you as an artist, is like if you just black out all of those Steven Universe characters, you would be able to immediately recognize them from their silhouettes, which is a huge thing if you're making comics and animation characters and stuff. That instant recognizability makes your characters a lot more iconic, and Belle and Ariel and all of them are extremely iconic characters, so I'm not saying that it's not possible to achieve that by having a more similar style, but if you see the silhouette of Pearl, you immediately know who she is if you watch Steven Universe. So that can be very helpful, and it can actually help create kind of like a brand for your cartoon, comic, whatever it is, that if you want to create something like that. So I've made these two characters, and if we place them side by side, they can definitely be like best friends, sisters, or whatever. They have very different body styles, but they can definitely be in the same comic or show. And then I'm going to make a third one, this time with very, very broad shoulders. I'm using some triangles instead if you guys want to try that out. And this is more like a Wonder Woman type of shape because she has a very broad back, is muscular, has more muscular arms, and I'm giving her still kind of like a short-ish legs. So these are the ones that I've chosen to do, but you guys can play around with this, just like really push it, like make the hips huge and make the torso like have tiny proportions. See what that looks like. Make the waist huge and make the hips have tiny proportions, and see what that looks like. And you can create all sorts of characters like that. Yeah, definitely just like kind of push the envelope with whatever you want. Make the feet huge, make the feet small. You can look up lots of different references for how people look also, and you can kind of use this method to copy those. You guys saw that I was drawing over a lot of this video, and you can kind of draw over some pictures if you just print them out, which you can definitely do if you come to the library. So draw over those, draw the circles over them to kind of get a basic idea of what the proportions are, and then try recreating that on your own and see what kind of characters you can come up with. Lastly, I'll mention, as far as that representation goes, you want to be educated about the character that you are representing. If you want to make a character and flesh out a story, it is recommended that you kind of like definitely do your research on what a person's experience might be like that, and you can definitely incorporate that into the story. I recently attended LGBTQ animators panel, for example, and the animators on there were talking about how like accurate representation of trans people is very important. like not falling into stereotypes or tropes that you might see in media with these groups, especially if the groups are typically marginalized. So that's just a very quick little like, definitely we want to expand representation in our media, if that's something that you want to do as a creator, but also just to be mindful about like different people's experiences and stuff like that. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next month for our next sketch and stuff session. Have a good day. Bye.